Hi everyone, welcome to week 5 of College Success Skills. I am recording this just prior to our class on Monday, so we are about to go meet in the library at 11:30 a.m. Today. When we're in the library today, what we're going to be talking about is something that the librarians call information literacy, which is our ability to look for, interpret, and synthesize information from a whole wide world of information. So there's literally infinity sources of information. It could be your best friend, it could be some guy on Capitol Hill, it could be some guy who wrote a book 1300 years ago. Regardless of where information comes from, we use it in our day-to-day life to inform our decisions. And that is critically why conducting research is such an important part of your academic experience, because the decisions you make as an auto technician or a health services specialist or a food service worker or a historian or whatever it is you're intending to be or are, your ability to make decisions in that role have to be informed by well-articulated, well-researched information. So that's what we're talking about today in the online lecture. The information literacy portion is a new addition to the College Success Skills curriculum or sort of topic that we cover in College Success Skills 1. So you're kind of a guinea pig group to it, so I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be conducted by a very fun librarian. Her name is Margaret Mills. So if you are watching this, you'll probably be watching this after class. Make sure to pay close attention to the notes that you took in that class. Hopefully you did take some. If you didn't take any, that you're able to remember what she talked about, because next Monday we'll also be meeting in the library and we'll be going over that information again, but in a much more directive way. We'll also be working in groups to present some information, so be prepared for that. So today, the online lecture, we're going to be talking about a little bit about the discussion board posts. I want to talk about what I'm seeing, the trends that I'm seeing, what I'd like to see continue, and what I'd like to see changed in the future. Talk about grades, talk about research in general, why we do it, how to do it, and also we'll talk a little bit about the final paper, which I'll be drilling into your heads every Monday for the next couple of weeks. Because even though December seems like a very long way away, it's not. It's pretty darn close. All right. So the question that we all need to answer today is, what is research? Before we go over that, you can go ahead and look what's on the screen, but I want to talk a little bit about what's been going on the discussion boards. There are 2 requirements that I have for the discussion board posts. The first is that it actually be relevant to the topic at hand. That will require you to answer all the questions that I ask, and also to really take the information that we're learning both in class and on the online lecture, put them together, and formulate a response that is intelligent, intellectual, and critically reflective. Not just regurgitating the information I've shared with you. That's not the purpose of college, and I hope that you can understand that. The second requirement that I have is that it be done complete and on time. Up until now, I've been grading you entirely based off of really whether or not what you've talked about is relevant and whether or not it's been on time. Everyone who has responded to the discussion board posts have talked about relevant issues and have been on time, and therefore you've gotten full credit. For those of you who have missed a week or who haven't done a discussion board on time, I did say in class last week and also in the online lecture that you can submit updated posts to me in a Word document emailed to me by last Friday, and I only got 1. So that means if you've missed any, you're kind of really behind the times. So I'm granting you the ability to turn in those posts late to me via email, not posted on the discussion board, because then everyone will know that you were late. And for every week that discussion board topic is late, which the day after the deadline will count as a week, you'll be deducted about 10 points minimum. So that means it's still possible to get like a B if you turn in a discussion board post the following week, as long as it's very well written. And that one person who turned in his response late did get the maximum amount of points he was eligible for, because it was a very well written response. He just didn't have time to do it. This is a priority. This is like really, other than the final exam and participate, or the final paper and the participation grade, the only thing you're graded on in this class. So it is important that you do them, and you do them on time. I think that a full week to do a paragraph is so easy that it shouldn't even be an issue for you at all. I'm also seeing in the discussion board posts a little bit of hesitation to accept some of the things we're talking about. Cornell Notes was a really good example. Some people loved them, some people didn't love them. Great. But for the people who didn't love them, there was a wide range of reasons why. One is it doesn't fit with my learning styles. I think that's legitimate. Another is it's a little bit too complicated in the class, just goes too fast for me, so I'm just taking notes like crazy, and so organizing my paper is not going to work for me. Okay, I can go with that. But to say that you're just kind of stubborn, or that you're not interested in taking notes, or that your class doesn't do lectures, those things can be worked around. And I'm not advocating for Cornell Notes at all, but I am advocating for you to consider taking notes in general, because I think that the arguments for note-taking, whether you're reading, watching a lecture, listening to a lecture, or engaging in a group discussion, the arguments for taking notes are pretty compelling. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm going to encourage you to really think about it and to keep trying different methods, okay? For those of you who liked Cornell Notes, try other things too, because you might like something else better. You know, it's not set in stone. That's just the kind of note-taking that we like to show you, and I think it's probably the strictest kind of note-taking that there is out there, okay? As far as grades go, we are going to be talking about the gradebook. Moodle's gradebook is giving me some difficulty because I've set up my grade spreadsheet in a specific way, and it's not accepting that, so I'm kind of changing and editing when I can, and it's pretty time consuming, so just bear with me. It will be active soon, by Monday, hopefully. If by Monday I can't get it active, you will get a little letter from me I will hand to you on Monday's class before we start. That will have your grades up until this point with some feedback. So that way you'll at least know where you're at. Most of you should know where you're at because of what I just told you about turning in the discussion boards on time. But for those of you who aren't, it's pretty clear to you, I think, where you're at. So let's talk about other things that I think are happier now. Research. So you've probably been staring at the screen for 10 minutes, and I'm sorry about that, but research is the process of collecting data and information in order to create new information, basically. So in academic world, which is where we are right now, college, it is the process of finding reasons to be engaged in your subject, finding ways to contribute to your field of study or to your field of work. And it's really as formal or informal as you want it to be. A lot of research at academia is very formal, and we'll talk about why here in a minute. But when it comes to writing a research paper or taking information and data that's already been collected and putting it together and then saying, hey, I'm finding a pattern, or I'm finding disagreement with these people, and then articulating that in a well-structured paragraph or sentence, that is the fundamental purpose of a research paper. It's to get you to understand the world of knowledge that exists in your field and how you can explore it on your own. So there are generally two types of research. There are plenty of others. There are also lots and lots and lots of different modes of research, which Margaret Knowles will be talking with you about today on Monday in class. But each of those modes fit into one of two categories. The first category is primary research. Primary research is a first-hand account or an actual study you are conducting to learn something about something. Okay, so science obviously does that. If you've ever taken a natural science class or you're planning to, and you have a lab, that lab would be first-hand primary research, because you're in the lab exploring something and identifying new information by physically being involved in the process of collecting that information. It can also be an idea that you have that's original, or it can be a painting that you paint directly and invokes new knowledge. Primary research is really just something that you physically do to create data. Okay? All fields use primary research in some way, shape, or form. All of your textbooks have, generally speaking, some kind of primary research, or at least have research that was done by someone who did primary research. You probably won't do a lot of this in college if you're getting, say, a certification in professional technical, or you're getting an associate's degree, but as you progress in your academic world, if you go on and get further certifications or further degrees, you might be doing some of this. You also might be doing some of this for your work, or for volunteer work that you might do, so primary research is an important thing to keep in mind. But we're primarily going to be talking about secondary research in this class. Secondary research you'll be doing much more often, probably in almost all of your subjects in some way, shape, or form. Secondary research is where you take bodies of information that already exist and you explore them, and you look at them and you synthesize them and you analyze them and you come up with your own ideas and your own observations that may or may not be original, okay? So you can think of this like primary research is a scientist in the lab looking for an answer and then writing it down. And secondary research is you finding where they wrote that information down and writing it down again. Okay? It can be factual or subjective. So secondary research can be, for example, I'm a volunteer with the American Cancer Society, and I work with their Relay for Life teams. And sometimes I'll see this primary research data from clinicians at like the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance or University of Washington or wherever, and they're giving us information about cancer rates so that we can use that information to then share with the public in order to invoke an emotional reaction so that they'll donate so that we can continue the research. So the primary research are the people in the labs actually getting the data, and the secondary research is us going out and finding that data and then sharing it with someone else. So you might be asking, well, that's all cool, but if somebody's doing it, why do we have to do it again? Well, there are a lot of different reasons. The broadest reason, and I tried to create this kind of graph that shows the representation, and it's nothing scientific, it's just a way to help understand that there are connections from the broadest reason we do something to the most specific reason we do something. The broadest reason that I could think of that we might conduct research was just because human nature is to explore knowledge and to learn and to grow. We have to. It's arguably an evolutionary reaction that we have in our minds. It could be an innate instinct that we have to learn about our environment and to adapt to it. So that would be a broad perspective. The secondary perspective that comes out of that is we also experience problems and issues that we think might have a solution that we don't know about. So we are learners, and we are learners looking to solve a problem. The third step down the tier would be that there are different fields of study that have conducted certain kinds of research, but it may not all come together into one idea, or there may not be lines drawn between one field to another. And so research, secondary research, allows us to take all those primary research pieces and put them together and to create new pieces of research. And the little tier here says, academic programs of study to resolve the social issue allow us to draw these lines and then recommend solutions as a result of them. So for example, with the American Cancer Society example I gave earlier, if we find that 90% of all people over the age of 80 who have smoked for more than 20 years are going to develop some kind of lung cancer, and we also know from the social sciences perspective that all people over 80 are more than 18% more likely to develop Alzheimer's. These are just things I'm throwing out there. I have no idea what the actual numbers are. then we can say there might be a distinction between these groups of people in their smoking habits and their Alzheimer's development. And we can maybe explore deeper by doing our own primary research to conduct an analysis of that, and then recommend a solution to that and say, well, we really need to stop selling cigarettes to whoever, or we really need to find a way to market an Alzheimer medication to these people. It's just a social problem is addressed as a result of synthesizing different fields of study. And the most microscopic reason we would conduct research is because we have a specific reason we have to do it that's external. So for you, you might be focused on the fact that you have a final paper you have to write in this class, and that would be, in your mind, the only reason to conduct research on student issues in college. But if you think broader than that, there is a purpose. There is a social reason why you're engaging in this research process, and it's important to identify that, because I think, for me anyway, it's a motivating factor. But I'm actually contributing to my field in some way, shape, or form. My paper may not be published, it may not be read by anyone but my instructor, but I know that I'm gaining knowledge by drawing these lines and these conclusions. Part of doing secondary research, and also certain forms of primary research as well, is to find sources. And sources are, they run the gamut. They can be your next door neighbor giving you an anecdote about what their day was like. It can be a professor who's gone to Zimbabwe and done all this great world culture research and giving a lecture in McIntyre Hall, or it can be you reading a textbook. There are a lot of different sources out there from which you can glean new information. The worst thing you can do on an assignment is to just go onto Google the night before and type in student issues in college, pick an issue, go to a website, and then just find little pieces of information that website states. Sometimes it's helpful, but it's certainly not appropriate to do that solely for one assignment. So not to pick one random website and then just go with it, because you have no idea, if you're not digging deeper, what kind of research was done on that website, whether or not any sources they're providing are real, whether or not the arguments they're making are outdated or even relevant to what you're talking about. So it's really important to get broad perspective and multiple sources under your belt so that you can make an informed decision about whether or not what you're going to be stating in your paper is real. Okay, so please don't do this. We all do it. Okay, it's a very helpful tool, Google, or any search engine, but it isn't the only way to get sources, and it's probably not appropriate in an academic setting to only get your sources from websites you find in Google, especially when there are millions to choose from. Use the library. So all of your tours that you took, one of the three groups, probably spent at least a minute or two in front of the library to talk about what the library has to offer. And as I'm learning more and more about the library, there's even more to offer than was covered in the tour. There's even more to offer than what you can find on the website. So it's important to visit the library when you're able to, because there is just so much there. And that's why libraries still exist. With the proliferation of the World Wide Web, people were afraid that physical libraries were going to go away, but no, libraries have adapted and have become even more useful than they ever were before. So you can go onto the library's website at sketch.edu and use their quick search tool to find all the sources that the library has to offer on whatever topic you're typing in. You can type in an author that you're looking for, or a specific subject, which is more often than not where you'll want to start. And it'll give you every kind of source that they have. A lot of it will be physical books or journals that they have in the actual library. Some of it will be articles that they've subscribed to or journals they've subscribed to online that you can just download PDFs online. And some of them will be documents or books that they don't have in the library, but that they can get for you through something called interlibrary loan. And if you ask for those sources, a couple weeks in advance, then they'll ship them to you, give them to you for a length of time, and you can bring them back to the library and they'll send them back totally free. I mean, who knew? There's literally a world of information down there, so it's important to use it. Also, if you go into the actual library, those librarians are experts at information finding, and so if you utilize them effectively and you develop those relationships with those librarians, they will really be a good source for you. They won't sit down at a computer and find sources for you, but they can help you identify which sources are better to use for which arguments. Wow, this got cut off, but it says online sources are usually not the most valid when they end in .com or .org. So basically, nonprofits.com may have information about nonprofits, but they may also be trying to persuade you to think a certain way because it's a commercial website. .com means commercial. .org is also a private interest organization. It could be a nonprofit, it could be a for-profit, you don't really know. So your best bets for information and data are websites that end in .gov or .edu. Those can still be biased data, so they need to be balanced with other sources, but they are usually more academically relevant. All right, so when you're writing a research paper, which is probably what most of you are going to be doing with what we're talking about today, the first step is to gather the information. It can take you an hour, it could take you 30 minutes, it could take you 4 days. Just depends on how many sources you feel you need to make whatever argument you want to make. Then you're going to go in and you're going to evaluate each source's relevance. So if it's a published text, what's the background on the author or the editor? Who are they? Why are they writing this topic? What is their expertise level? Because there are books that can be published. I could write a book today, and if I had the money, I could have it published and shipped to libraries around the world, and it could just be my opinions, and it could have no impact on the world at all. So you're going to be evaluating the source's validity and relevance, and that's where you kind of edit, well, you know, this website, it seems a little bit commercial, I may just throw that out, or I may only use this section because it aligns with this other more legitimate source's argument, whatever process you go through there. You're going to compare and contrast the arguments that are found. So you'll say, oh, well, this book says this about this topic, but this article online says this, and they conflict in their arguments, so I need to address that in my paper. I need to actually say these things don't agree, so more research is needed, or you need to go out and find the data that finds the common ground there. You're going to outline your argument in a paper. So the paper usually will be in a Word document. Usually it will be several pages long. Usually the concept of a 5-paragraph essay, which you might have heard about in high school or in junior high, it's not a research paper necessarily. You're going to be taking all these pieces of information and you're going to be outlining your argument supported by the sources that you've found. Okay. Now, there are going to be pieces of information that say, actually, you know, what the argument you're making is not true, and you need to bring that up in your paper. The reason you want to bring that up in your paper is, one, because if you have evidence from other sources that refute what that author is saying, that allows you to bring more legitimacy to what you're writing. Okay. It also supports your argument. But it also shows that there are gaps in the research, there are opportunities to be explored, and you're identifying those gaps. So maybe one day you can be that person finding ways to fill them. You're going to seek outside help to format your paper. I am notorious, when I was in college, I was notorious for writing a paper and just going through it and doing spell check, doing word count, calling it good. My grades suffered, especially later on in my college years for that. In grad school, I was finally smart enough to give myself a day or two to go to the writing center on campus, and our campus does have a writing center. and get my paper edited from an expert who can go through and not only talk about grammar and spelling, but who can also talk about how to set up my paper in a way that is academically appropriate. There are ways to make your paper look really good that I didn't know about either, so really important to find outside help. You're going to edit. If the paper's too long, you're going to find arguments that aren't useful in your paper and you're going to cut them out. If your paper's too short, you're going to go back and you're going to find more sources and you're going to add arguments to your paper. Editing is sometimes the hardest thing to do, and if you're passionate about a subject, sometimes editing out information can be harder than putting new information in. But it is important that you stick with your instructor's guidelines. And then you're going to submit your paper to your instructor and you're going to feel really good because you know that if you followed all these steps, you've done a really good job. You may not get 100%, but you'll get a good grade because you've done what you need to do. All right, the final paper in this class. Dun, dun, dun. The first thing I'm going to say is citations count. And if you've never done citations for a source, that's basically just you giving credit to the person who found or stated information you're quoting or using in your paper. So if you use a book and you find a nice little quote that supports what you're saying and you put it in there, or you synthesize it or summarize it and put it in there, you need to cite that person came up with that argument before you did. Otherwise, you're stealing their intellectual property. They own that. So there are two suggested citation formats that I've given to you, APA or MLA. I'm really okay with you using any legitimate citation format as long as all the information is there and it's organized in a legitimate way. So you can't just say author, title, date, publisher, done. That's not in an appropriate format. So you need to look at these formats. That makes this paper a little bit more difficult to do, okay, but it is important. It's going to be 3 to 4 pages, double-spaced, 12-point font. That's really not hard to do if you are finding a subject that is really if you're asking a question about an issue in a college student's life, you should find hundreds of sources supporting it. Now, I'm not telling you you need to put hundreds of sources in your paper. I'm thinking like 3 to 4, okay, just calm down. But you really should be okay with putting with the page length. I really would like to see 3 pages, or at least information that goes halfway through a 3rd page. It's the content more than the quantity, absolutely. So if you're able to fit it into 2 pages, then awesome. But you need to use a critical reflection process, and I think that usually takes a little bit more time to do. It's due to me by 11:55 p.m. on December 8th to my email. So that means you're not posting it on Moodle, you're emailing it to me, and I will grade it as soon as I get it in my email box. That is the Sunday before finals week, so if you finish this early and you have finals, you'll have more time to study for your finals and not focus on this class. Okay? Late papers are not accepted, so if 11:55 p.m. on Sunday, December 8th passes and you've not submitted your paper, you will not get credit for your paper. And it's worth 25% of your grade. The reason I am so focused on this aspect is because most of your classes are going to have really firm deadlines with really high graded items, exams or papers. And faculty want you to be disciplined and want you to be able to organize your time in a way that focuses on their class, which is hard to do when you've got lots of classes and life to deal with. So all of the things we've talked about in using your calendar, in taking notes, in working ahead and giving yourself plenty of time to do things, this is the time to start implementing that if you haven't already. So basically start your paper now because we're going to be in the library for the next 2 weeks and it's really not anything, unless you have a class or something you have to get to stay after and actually just find your sources while you're there. So there really is no reason to not start now. These are the sources. As I've said, this is an APA format of the sources that I found. So that's it for this week. Please remember to do your discussion board post online by 11:55 p.m. this coming Sunday. I'd like to see a real effort in the discussion board posts, because at this point forward we are grading on content and not just the fact that you've done it. So please put some energy into it. Have a great week, everyone, and I will see you in class Monday.